This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Good evening everyone and welcome to Southern Cross News. A 20-year-old man has been killed in a car crash at Turners Marsh in the early hours of this morning. The Underwood man died at the scene while a passenger was taken to hospital with minor injuries. Our reporter Sean McComish has more.
Emergency services rushed to this stretch of Pipers River Road in the early hours of this morning. Police say the driver lost control of his Toyota Land Cruiser as it crossed into the other lane and rolled over.
As a result of the crash, the driver is unfortunately deceased.
A 21-year-old passenger from Ravenswood luckily escaped with only minor injuries.
Another male passenger that was in the vehicle has been taken to hospital at the time of the crash but was discharged shortly after with only minor injuries.
It's not yet known if speed, drugs or alcohol were involved. But tragically, police say the death would have been avoided if the driver had worn a seatbelt.
My advice from crash investigators that attended is that this fatality would have been preventable if he'd been wearing his seatbelt.
Police are asking for any witnesses who may have seen the car just prior to the incident to come forward. A report will be prepared for the coroner.
Investigators have returned to the scene of an alleged hit-and-run fatality in Launceston. 48-year-old Adrian Tudor was killed on September 6 after his car was struck by another vehicle which allegedly ran a red light. This morning, police closed a lane of traffic at the Wellington and Frederick Street intersection to survey the area. Police are yet to lay charges. The ongoing Taswater saga could almost be over, with the state government securing a stake in the corporation. The government will take a 10% share in Taswater in return for a $200 million cash injection over the next decade.
Next year, prices won't go up at all, and that in the subsequent 7-year period, the maximum increase will be 3.5% per annum, but it could be less.
We've got to get on with the job of improving services for Tasmania. I think getting everyone on the same page, a strong commitment by government will help us get there.
28 of the 29 local councils voted in favour of the deal, with Kingborough the only council rejecting the move. Tasmania's health system has again come under fire, with a hidden report revealing a $100 million shortfall in health spending. The government refutes the findings in their entirety, but the Australian Medical Association says enough is enough.
It's a report which was never meant to see the light of day, accusing the government of significantly underfunding our health system.
They've got to admit they've got a problem and they've got to find the dollars to fix the problem. Or next year it will be worse, and next year it will be worse, and next year it will be worse, and they will claim, we'll wait till next year. Let's get on and fix the problem.
The independent report was commissioned by the health service itself. It found the system was facing a structural deficit of almost $100 million, and there was a severe lack of planning to keep up with demand, only fixed by increasing funding or making cuts.
Everyone knows, everyone sees in the media every day the circumstances that our health system is in, and it shows, this report shows, what the problems are, and it's underfunding.
The government rejects the findings outright, saying it's rolling out more beds, more funding and more staff.
It provides advice and guidance that we've rejected on the basis of we're not a government that makes health cuts.
It is just rubbish. Just rubbish what is being floated that we are considering making cuts to health.
But the peak medical body says the government needs to find the money and fast, or things will only get worse.
That's got to start with a clinical services plan and involve the clinicians of Tasmania in that. Not just the doctors, the nurses and everyone involved in delivering health care.
This absolutely says in black and white what we have been saying for years, that this government chronically underfunds health, and that is what has led to the crisis that we see in our hospital system every day.
Today in Parliament, the Health Minister narrowly survived a no confidence vote as the pressure on our system continues. Michelle Wisby, Southern Cross News.
The Greens have tabled new draft legislation which would scrap a law that makes begging a crime in Tasmania. Under the current laws, someone convicted of begging could face a $700 fine or time in prison. The Greens say it's an example of injustice within our community.
Why does our law then seek to punish them twice over by charging the person with being poor and begging, slugging them potentially with a fine they won't be able to pay, or hanging the threat of imprisonment over their heads?
The party will now seek the support of Parliament to pass the amendment. New laws designed to stop outlaw motorcycle gangs from expanding in Tasmania have passed their final hurdle in Parliament. The government's laws make it illegal for two convicted criminals to consort with one another within 5 years of receiving a written warning. The Upper House debated the legislation late into last night, eventually passing it with only minor amendments. Tasmania has missed out on the first of two Qantas pilot training schools, with Toowoomba in Queensland selected as the program's first location. The academy, due to open mid-next year, edged out bids from Launceston and Devonport airports. Tassie isn't out of the running just yet, with Launceston among 8 other cities shortlisted for the second location, along with Alice Springs, Bendigo, Busselton, Dubbo, Mackay, Tamworth and Wagga Wagga. Locations are selected based on access to uncongested airspace, a high proportion of clear weather days per year, and the ability to attract students and trainers to live in the area. Tasmania is being praised by Australia's top tourism leaders for highlighting our experiences rather than just our landmarks. Tourism Australia says Mona, Sapphire Freycinet and Barnbougle Dunes are all leading the way and drawing significant tourism expenditure.
When looking for the next holiday destination, Tourism Australia says there are several factors travellers take into account, and the latest trend suggests people are just as, if not more so, interested in experiences rather than typical landmarks.
We're always looking for different places to holiday, do something different. I think you've got that story. The way that Tourism Tasmania has told that story through, Feed You Curious, through Go Behind the Sceneries, through the investment and experiences you have here, events like Dark Mofo, that's really been part of the drawcard.
Tourism operators from across the state gathered in Devonport today to hear what we're doing well and where we can improve.
Barnbougle, Sapphire, Mona. And so what we're really hoping for here in the northwest corner of Tassie is that the developments at Cradle Mountain put us on that level, put our section, our part of Australia on that level.
Tasmania is set to focus in 2 new campaigns running this year. The first is called Undiscover Australia, which focuses specifically on high-value travellers in India, Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia. The second, Signature Experiences, aims to highlight food, wine and niche interests. Another area Tassie is set to tap into is business travel, which generates around $4.75 billion a year and accounts for 16% of visitation nationally.
The big market we've got an eye on is India. We think it'll be, can be as big as China probably by the time we get to 2040, but certainly between now and 2030 we think it can grow very aggressively.
Jessica Moran, Southern Cross News.
Tasmanian children dealing with trauma, grief and loss are set to benefit from a $20,000 grant. The funding from the Harcourts Foundation will go towards expanding City Mission's Inside Out for Kids program, which has helped over 530 children during the past year.
And that's a form of cognitive group therapy for small groups of children in schools, predominantly primary schools, but now also in high schools, and also one-on-one counselling for some children that need to work on some bigger issues.
A local counselling and support service also received a cheque for $10,000 to help those in need in northern Tasmania. Tasmanians who care for our most vulnerable are being thanked this week with community-based support celebrating its 30th anniversary. The organisation works with people of all ages and has been the basis for many blossoming friendships.
With a heart of gold, Gwenda has notched up 25 years of giving as a worker at community-based support.
You meet a lot of lovely people over the journey.
Gwenda and her client Betty have formed a special friendship over the past decade, one which reaches beyond client and carer.
I couldn't cope without Gwenda. I might tell her off at times, but I don't mean it.
I love people and I love the elderly, and I think it's lovely to keep them in their own home. I'm nearly 72 myself, so I know what it's like.
Across the state, 230 carers work with over 1,000 people, ranging from those living with a disability to the elderly.
It empowers people with disability and their families. It enables them to become fully active within their own community.
The organisation today marking its 3rd decade, and what better way to celebrate a 30th than cutting into a 3-layered cake.
They do their job with heart and soul, and what they do is important to them as much as it's important to the rest of the community.
Now the next generation is looking to step up to keep the good work going for another 30 years. Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
Now let's take a look at the day's business and finance news with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The Australian share market has closed lower, dragged down by mining and banking stocks after commodity prices weakened overnight. The ASX 200 index has dropped by 11.1 points. Short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at 72.29 US cents and 108.83 New Zealand cents.
After leading the Hobart Chargers to Seabull Championship glory this season, men's coach Anthony Stewart has been reappointed for the 2019 program, with discussions underway to extend his contract into 2020 as the club works towards becoming NBL ready within a few years' time.
I think Anthony Stewart deserves an opportunity to coach an NBL side. Anthony Stewart, let's face it, is the GOAT in Tasmania, the greatest of all time.
And after his side fell short of finals, women's coach Dwayne Davies' position has been put out to expressions of interest following 3 years under his leadership.
We think he's done a great job, but we think it's also time, just in the evolution of the Hobart Chargers story, to test the market in the women's program.
It's still unknown if the Seabull competition will continue into next year or if the state's 3 clubs will join a new-look Victorian League. Another gallant century from Ben McDermott has guided the Tigers to a hard-fought one-day cup victory against South Australia in Sydney. Needing something special from the tail order, it was one of the side's pacemen who belted the winning runs. In desperate need of a breakthrough following a shaky start with the ball, Bo Webster delivered.
Oh, there we go. Big shout for the reverse. He's given him.
Undeterred, Jake Weatherold belted his way past 50, refusing to be intimidated by the Tigers' attack.
This one's down and hit and out of the ground.
The wicket of the danger man wasn't a pretty one, but Riley Meredith was all but happy to claim it. Gurinder Sandhu doing his bit for the cause, with the Redbacks' bottom order showing little resistance. Chasing 233, it was a case of deja vu for Matthew Wade as his day ended on another duck. Ben McDermott picking up the pieces as the heavy hitter settled in. Webster unable to translate his form with the ball into a performance with the bat.
Straight through by Webster.
McDermott finding a worthy partner in Jordan Silk as the pair notched up a half-ton each to see the Tigers back on track before Kane Richardson provided one for the highlight reel.
He's hit the stumps and he's given out.
Tigers skipper's form slump continuing, lasting just 5 balls before another promising innings from Simon Malenko was brought to an abrupt halt on 21. Rogers and Rose joining him in the shed soon after and leaving the Tigers in need of a minor miracle. McDermott adding another one-day ton to his cup campaign to keep them in the hunt, with Sandhu proving the unlikely finisher, gifting his side the 3-wicket win with a boundary and an over to spare.
Good evening. Temperatures above average today for most. Bushy Park and Hobart, our high with 22 degrees, Launceston 18, Burnie 14 and Devonport 15. Flinders Island recorded 21 degrees, Friendly Beaches, Ouse and Strawn on 20, St Helens 19, King Island 16, Lowhead though just 14 degrees. Cloud free over eastern Tasmania as a little bit of cloud started to build up a little bit over the west as that cold front moves towards the state. Let's have a look at the bigger picture with more clouds stretching back to South Australia with a cold front, and below that we have a cold pool of air. You can see the open cellular cloud there, bit of thunderstorm activity off the New South Wales coast. Tomorrow's chart shows a cold front over Victoria that moves to east of Tasmania. A high moves in behind the front, and troughs also spread across the mainland. Winds west to southwesterly at 15 to 25 knots, reaching 30 knots in the south with a 3.5 metre swell. Winds up to 20 knots inland. A strong wind warning from Tasman Island to Low Rocky Point, a small craft wind alert for the lakes. Also a bushwalkers alert for the west and a warning to sheep graziers for the east and southeast. And for tomorrow, Hobart, a shower or two and 13, dropping dramatically. 13 the top for Huonville with a shower, also for Campania as well on 13 degrees. Launceston, partly cloudy, 14 the maximum, 14 also for Devonport, a top of 13 for Georgetown, bit of cloud about but not much rain if any. Possible shower for Burnie and 13, 11 degrees with Strawn expecting a shower or two, Wynyard the same and 13 as well. Now, St Helens partly cloudy, 16 the top, 14 for Swansea with a shower clearing, a shower or two for Port Arthur and 13 degrees. On Saturday, showers over the west, south and King Island, areas of morning frost ahead of a fine day elsewhere. Showers over the west and far south on Sunday, fine for the rest of the state, and fine on Monday apart from a shower over the southwest, the chance of another frost too. Partly cloudy in Perth tomorrow. A few showers forecast for Adelaide and Melbourne, a late shower or storm for Sydney and Brisbane.